How's everybody doing? Sunday afternoon.
Good.
It's amazing and exciting that you guys could join us, and I'm super delighted to be here and have this amazing opportunity to talk to personally my favorite filmmaker out of India, and storytelling. Living in the West and having a background of corporate life before I went into the creatives, I've realized one thing, that in life, I can pretty much imagine my life without like anything corporate, anything that we need or we think we need. But I've realized that I cannot imagine my life without art. Without music, without films, and without storytelling, and filmmaking, especially being the only art form that has all the other art forms in it. Right? You have writing in it, you have photography, videography, storytelling, design, theater. I mean, everything is in it. So, as an aspiring filmmaker myself. This is such a great moment for me, and I'm sure for you guys to have perhaps, like in my perception, I think the greatest filmmaker in India today. And so without further ado, I'm just going to invite the one and only legendary Mr. Anurag Kashyap on stage, and let's give him a warm round of applause. Welcome, sir.
Already retired me.
Well, he's a living legend. So, so thank you for being here. And it's amazing to have you in Vancouver, and amazing to have you be such an important, integral part of this Vancouver International South Asian Film Festival this year. I'm just going to start by saying how has your stay been so far?
Oh, it's been great. I've got an army of 4 women looking after me.
Army of 4 women, the 4 horsemen, horsewomen. So I'm just gonna dive into creatives, because I'm so excited to talk about processes and I want to be able to travel inside that head of yours as much as I can. So first thing I want to talk about is tell us a little bit about your sensibility, your sensitivity towards storytelling and filmmaking and this art form, especially the filmmaking art form. Like, what was the genesis?
In Genesis, I was studying to be a scientist. Actually.
Well, you are a scientist.
Yeah, I was studying to be a scientist. I was doing microbiology, and my whole growing up as a child, all I wanted to do was find that thing that can beat the virus. That's, when you're a little kid and you live in your own head, and you think that you will find solution to every problem in the world. So that's who I was. And I used to write my stories. And pretty much what happened was, I was a closet writer. I used to write my stories, and I tried to submit my story for a school magazine. It kind of created a furore in the school because the editor passed it on to my teacher. My teacher said this boy couldn't have written it. He passed it on to the principal. The principal called my father. I was in a boarding school. Everybody was like, how could you think like that? How can a boy of like 10 years old boy, like, writing a discourse on death and things, and it actually came from that whole interpersonal relationship, the school of that hierarchy in boarding school, that kind of bullying, which is not really physical bullying, but it's there. And it was about that, and I meant it, and I was told that you couldn't have written it. I was told that I must have copied it from somewhere, and I was a Hindi speaking boy. I never spoke a word of English. And my teacher said, this is not genuine. And I had to look up. I was so offended because I looked up what genuine meant in the dictionary. I was so offended by the teacher. I decided I will never show my writing to anyone.
Wow.
So that was the end of my writing.
And this was when you were 10?
I was 10 years old. After that, I never showed my writing to anyone. And then there was a film festival I saw in Delhi. And for the first time, I saw cinema that was beyond. Because I was a Hindi speaking guy. And I read mostly Hindi literature. And I hardly spoke a word of English. And then I saw this cinema that I had never seen before. I was 19. And that was 1993, January. And I think by the end of the festival, I had decided what I wanted to do in life. And by June, I was in Bombay.
Wow. So at 19, when you saw this festival, you knew where you were going to head in life. So tell us, like initially when you were growing up in your town, because obviously India, one of the reasons why India is famous all over the world is because of its film industry and Bollywood, and it's such a huge, massive, colossal industry, and it is such an intricate part of the Indian culture and social fabric.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up in your town, what was the culture, like the cinema culture?
I grew up in a far-off place, in the sense, if you think Gangs of Wasseypur, that house where Manoj Bajpayee's wife gives birth to the child, that's the house I grew up in.
Right.
So I grew up in that house, that small two-room house. That whole thing is borrowed from my life, where the mother beats the child. My mom used to do that, because every time I would go to her, I would question.
Yeah.
And that mountain behind the house, where the actors, I made them sit, and they used to sit and watch. That's where I used to spend all my time.
Right.
And I would sit there and would try and catch snakes, and I would try and catch, those small animals. What do you call that? Porcupines.
Right.
And we'd try and take a basket and find a porcupine and put the basket on the porcupine and see how it plays. We would try and do things like that. And that's how I spent my childhood. That's why I went there. And that ghost town where I shot the film,
Right.
I knew that ghost town existed because I grew up there. My brother was born in that house.
Wow.
So that is where I grew up. So our culture, there was just this one club. There was not a single cinema. To watch a film on screen, we had to travel 6 hours. The nearest city was Banaras. And this was in the middle of mountains in the Vindhyachal. And there was this small club. And my family was a family of maths geniuses and people like that. And my father was this engineer whose job was to set up the new power projects. So he was sent to all the remote parts of India to set up power projects, to generate electricity. This was in the late 60s, early 70s. So he's the one who set up most of the power projects in India. And so his job was transferable, and everywhere he went was where he started from the scratch. So when we went there would be like 2 houses, and we would be one of the inhabitants, and then slowly the colony would come up, and engineers would come in, and slowly families would come in, and they'll make a school, and they would make a hospital and things like that. So it all came up in front of me many times over.
Right.
So that's how my life was spent. My father got so tired of it one day that he sent us to boarding school. So I spent most of my life in boarding school.
Boarding school. That's amazing. Sounds like you came from a very logical family. Like they were all like very logical people, engineers. So being and realizing that you were the creative one. At 10 you were writing.
I was the only logical one in the class.
Illogically logical?
No, in the sense that I never took a call that I think anybody was ever happy with. Now it's all, in retrospect, it's all fine.
Yeah.
Because I was the only one who did things I was not meant to do.
Right. So now, fast forward to you're 19, you saw this film. Clearly, from my research and understanding, and as a aspiring filmmaker and somebody who you inspire me so much. When I look at your work, it is so evident that it is not you're not typically influenced by Bollywood, like the mainstream Bollywood, and it makes a lot of sense when a foreign film. It was an Italian film. So today, when I look at your films, as central as Indian as Indian it can be, your films, but it has this very global, very humane substance to it. And so, is there a process, like when you conceive an idea, and like how do you think that, okay, this is how I want, or you just like?
No, it's very simple thing. I don't know. See, every time people see my film and they talk about style and they talk about how do you create style, and I have never actually consciously created style ever. For me, anything that has come in out of its own necessity and restrictions. And I think also because I was not educated in Bollywood, in the sense, it is not that my cinema language is very global. It is that the Bollywood cinema language is so unique and incestuous that I relatively look very global. In the sense that, like for example, there's a Jimmy Jib. When Jimmy Jib came into the industry, if you see every movie, people don't know how to shoot a song. They put a camera on Jimmy Jib and it just goes over people. They use it like a baseball bat. They've forgotten it's a crane.
Right.
So it is like that. In the sense, the whole idea of what constitutes a filmmaker is all warped in Bollywood. Like a producer will produce your film on the basis of whose assistant you have been. Not on the basis of whether you can write a script. They don't know how to judge a person who has a visual mind.
Right.
And which is why what happens is, we are one country where most directors don't write their own scripts. And I'm saying, if you look at any of the successful directors, they're all the ones that write their own scripts. Just every director is like just a technician on hire. They just put cameras together, they hire a good editor, they hire a good cameraman, they hire a good someone, and they depend on them to put a film together. Nobody really sees a film in their head. So to them, I come across as a weirdo. So, it is like, it is a very relative thing, in the sense, when you go out, I never feel like a weirdo when I meet filmmakers abroad.
Right.
Because they all see things in their head.
Right.
It's like the musician thinks in loops. So for someone else, they always ask you a question, how do you direct, how do you do things? For me, it's as simple as asking someone, how do you drive a car? Because I don't know how to drive a car. I think it just are like that. I see a whole film in my head.
Right.
So and do it very simply. A very simple craft that I have is follow the subject. I just follow the subject. I don't do anything unnecessary.
Right.
And it is like that. When I need to see how big the space is or how small this subject is in comparison to the space, I'll try and find a vantage point where I can see the whole thing. So it's the need to see that pushes me to find a vantage point. So what do I need to see is what makes me look for a vantage point.
Right.
Otherwise, I always try and go away from the subject and shoot in a way that, so it's like, suppose I'm shooting you walking and talking to someone. If I go with you, it has to be free flowing and handed. But if I go back and I put it on the stand, so you can walk and talk, my cameras can move with you. Right? It gives the subject the space and he can inhabit the whole space. And the camera is very non-intrusive and is watching them. So it is that, and plus we have not, the roots of theatre are so strong in Bollywood that because when we perform on stage, we tend to face the audience. Right? So what now, most of the filmmakers, the mistake they do is everybody performs for the camera like they're performing on stage, so they face the camera. Whereas they don't realize you don't have to face the camera can go on the other side. And sometimes it works much more if I really don't see your face and I just see the back. So everybody tends to perform for the camera. And camera is such a sensitive thing that it can catch you immediately. You do this much extra and you're gone.
And I've noticed in your films, and I've heard you speak about, like, you're a big fan of the guerrilla style kind of.
It is guerrilla style kind of, we evolved the style simply because we never had any money to do things. So the whole idea is that I want to shoot things in their own natural habitat and existence. But the problem with people is the moment you put a camera, everybody becomes very curious. And they start looking into the camera as if some Merlin Monroe is going to walk out of the camera. And especially in India. They just look into the camera like that. And you put a news camera on the street and people behind this, suddenly they all become they start performing. Everybody starts performing.
Yes.
Everybody starts saying things as if, because instead of, they're not really answering a question, they start imagining how they would be looking like answering this question when I come on TV.
On screen, yes.
So, and so everything becomes very unnatural. So that's the reason why I hide the camera.
Right.
I don't want anyone to perform for the camera. So that has become our guerrilla style. So we always hide the camera, and many a times what happens is even when I was shooting on a set like Bombay, I had to create that whole red light district and things, and I told each single actor what they're doing, and kept rehearsing with them, third rehearsal, fourth rehearsal, okay, I said let's move on. So when I'm taking the shot, they don't realize that I've taken the shot already. So, because the moment I say I'm taking a shot, and you don't know, you have to keep doing that because they also are like, okay, this guy shoots the rehearsal.
Right.
The next time they'll be ready for the rehearsal. So then you have to,
They know
it's a constant thing that you're doing with the actor.
Right. So you always have to be 2 steps ahead of them.
Yeah, I'm saying I always have to be shooting while they are not aware
Yes.
that the camera is capturing them. So my camera is always on.
So are you determined always to capture organic performance?
No, it's not that. I need to believe. I only go by one thing. Whatever is on screen, do I believe it or not? It could be the most unrealistic thing in the world. It could be so far-fetched, but I need to believe the truth of it.
Right.
So I just, my whole search, it's not really that I know anything. I only try to find the truth.
Right.
In that moment with the actor.
Right. And I think this style obviously, it pushes your creativity forward and it proves to be very fruitful. But do you find it logistically challenging? And if so, how do you orchestrate that?
See, everything is challenging. In the sense, for me, I don't compromise on the performance of the actor. But what happens is suddenly you're trying to get one scene right. Like I was doing this film, and this new film has 10-page sequences, and I have only one day to shoot them. And I keep trying to get it perfect. I tried all day to get the whole shot perfect. And actors are brilliant, but they'll falter in one place or the other. Because it's a 10-minute long sequence. But then one moment I kept trying till half a shift was over to get in one shot, and then I have to become a producer as well. I know I have only half a shift left. I have to finish a lot of work. And then I start trying to edit it and trying to see what are the options, and then I revisit my things and okay, individually in different shots I've got everything. So how do I now put it together? And my mind starts working like that. So then I start taking those options where it can all come together, cement together, and can look seamless. So that's how my process is. So you have a director that is allowed to indulge till half a day. As the producer kicks in, and the producer brings in the editor and the writer to the director, which is all me.
Right.
And say that now it's time to get up. Because I can't extend, I have to finish that within that day, because I also work on very low cost, low budget. And sometimes we pull off.
So I know you wear many hats, but especially as a director, I'm very interested to know your temperament and your mindset on set. Like when you're on set.
On set, I think we have the calmest set. Really? Anybody who's come on our set, they always think it's the calmest set they've worked on. Right. Somehow, if I don't like people screaming on the set. So when the cameraman screams, I'm the first one to calm him down. I'll take him aside. And I only work with, I've never worked with a cameraman who doesn't smoke up, so. The easy solution is take them out.
Take them for a smoke break.
Yeah. So, and they love it, and most of the cameramen, because they work the hardest. Right, physically.
Yeah.
And whether or not people anywhere in the world admit it, a cameraman who smokes up before he comes on the set. And that's the truth one must know. So So I know that and I use it sometimes.
So I want to now talk about inspirations, because the route to producing, making, and giving birth to stories and amazing films, it always starts with an inspiration, you know. And I know you're one of those very few ones that loves to be inspired by things that society does not want to talk about, things that people like, you know, just hide, or things that are taboo. Why are you like that?
I don't know, because when I was going through my whole childhood and I was being bullied, or I went through abuse and everything, nobody was there to talk to me about it. And every time I talked to my dad about it, he would be like so embarrassed and ashamed, and would tell me that, don't worry, everyone goes through it. And that's when I realized he probably went through it. That's when I realized half the world has gone through it. And nobody talks about anything. And that only makes you much more unhealthy. And nobody speaks the truth. It's like when I started writing blogs within the industry, and I would write very simple facts about like somebody not getting their credit, or somebody's money not being paid. The whole industry was very upset with me. Because they said, why are you saying these things? I said, why must I not say those things? Who would speak up for people who are not ready to speak up for themselves? And that's why what happens is, because I did nothing except just state things as they were. So it kind of became a war and a revolution for others that Anurag changed the industry. I did not do anything. I was only fighting my battle, and I like to sleep well. When I go to bed, I sleep.
Right.
Because I don't want to leave things unspoken and unsaid.
Right.
So I started, my blogs were only about that.
Right.
The industry took 5-6 years to come around it. Like they hated me for years, because I said, who's this guy who's like saying something that you don't dare say anything about Mr. Bachchan, you don't dare say anything about that one or this one. And I would say the facts.
Right.
So, but eventually industry also came around, because then they realized those very people I spoke about also came around, and they said that, no, there's nobody who's pulled me up. And but that's why I make films like that. I said, why do we not talk about these things? Why don't we discuss these things?
So there's this there's obviously this sense of immense courage.
No, it's not courage. It's just natural. I don't think I need any extra courage. I don't know any other way to be. Because what I can't do is like, why are we being ostriches in the sense? I mean, we just don't speak the unspeakable. And we think that just because, that's why I keep saying that, we think that anything that makes us uncomfortable must be bad. Any idea that, like, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I constantly deal with things and issues that she deals with, and I talk about things that she tells me about, and they will say, why, it's like, you should not say. I said, yeah, but the things that make me uncomfortable, but I address them. I have to talk to them.
Right.
But we tend to ignore it. We get, like, when we are sitting in a circle and it's something that comes from our children that we feel that other adults should not know about it, we get very uncomfortable and we dismiss the child and we say, "Andar jao tum."
Yes.
I'm saying we have this tendency.
Yeah.
And that's where we do wrong.
Right.
That's where we are not teaching our child to speak the mind.
Right.
We get uncomfortable as if like it's going to make us fall. And that is something that has always affected me, and I've been the victim of it as a kid.
Right.
So I speak about things like that.
I can totally relate to it, and it's so true when you mentioned, like, when parents are talking, or older people are talking, they tell the kids to, बड़ों के बीच में मत आओ, बाहर जाओ और अंदर जाओ, and it leaves such a lasting imprint. But but I'm curious to know, and I know you said it's not courage, but this progressiveness in you, especially in an industry like Bollywood in Bombay, the progressiveness, the tenacity that I admire so much about, and to stay integral. Have you had like integral challenges at times?
There have been lots of things. This time I was absolutely broke, which I'm like 80% of the time. And my marriage was falling apart. My 2 films were bad. I was drinking non-stop. and there was no money.
This was during Punch?
Now this was after Punch, after Black Friday. This I'm talking about 2005.
Okay.
It's 2005, and there's this producer who'd seen Black Friday and Punch, and there's this big star who was a massive fan of my work, and I was not working with any of those people. So this producer was desperate to work with that star. That star said, "Get me this director and I will work with you." So this producer first came and he told me that, you know, you're living in a rented house, you don't have a car, you don't have money. You point a penthouse from Bandra to Andheri and that is yours. I just laughed and
He said that to you?
yeah. And one of the biggest producers in the industry. And I laughed at it and I came back home. And everybody at home was very upset. Then they did not know what to say to me. So this man, what he did was, he brought in a suitcase full of 90 lakh rupees, cash, and left it at my house. And that was the solution to all our problems. And I would look at that suitcase, stare at it for 3 days. Those 3 days were the worst 3 days of our lives. Like open them, count it, look at it, wanting to spend it. And then finally it was literally like, and everybody would look at me like, why are you thinking so much? Just take it. And then I asked him, I said, please come and take the money away. I said, no, it's okay, keep it away. I said, no, you take it away. I have left it outside my building. Before somebody comes and steals it, come and take it away. He immediately came and took it away. So those things happened there.
And I'm sure, everybody in your family at that time thought you were crazy and...
No, that they thought for the longest time, but no, I don't think they think like that anymore. Because it's like, it takes time for people to come around.
Of course.
Because then they thought I was crazy, I was not doing things like others were doing because my films were banned. Today they realize that everything that's built up is because of those things, those calls that I took.
Exactly.
Today when you look back and they realize that, so it's like everybody knows me for last 5 years, but my family has seen all 23 years. Right? So the first 18, 17 years make sense to them now. Because they've also seen that what happens, they've seen a lot of people who are my friends, who came after me, became very successful. So there were immediate comparisons. Just look at him and look at you. And then I would not do that. And then they've also seen the same person falling and disappearing. But they've seen me steadily being there. So when there's a consistency over so many years, they finally leave you alone. Now my dad, everybody lets me be now.
Everybody lets you.
Yeah, because...
Well, you've earned it.
No, also plus I still live in the village. In the sense, the Warsaw village, I still have not changed my house. I still live in that small house. I still drive that, I have that driver with the Scorpio. I still live with my cook. Whereas all my partners live in posh houses. Right. So everybody's concerned, why don't you change your lifestyle? And the whole thing is, I don't want to pay EMI. If EMI starts dictating me, then I'll start taking calls and decisions which are based on something else. I have never got anything on EMI. Which is why nobody can tell me what to do. I control my own time. So it's a very simple things. When you have EMIs that control you, you have like loans that you have to pay back. I have no loans, I have nothing.
That's amazing. So now, you've obviously been a fighter in Bombay, and
I'm actually not. That's why I keep saying I'm not a fighter. I'm an avoider in the sense. I avoid.
But you avoided
situations where that could pull me down.
Exactly, but you avoided in ways that you didn't compromise.
Yeah.
You stayed true to yourself, and it's obviously not easy. But now, in over the years, you've earned a certain credibility, and now there's this whole movement in India, which is credited to you, and I think rightfully so. So today now, आप जिस मुकाम पे हो आज, आज आप बैठ के when you look at the scope and when you look at your accessibility and when you look at your ability to meet and reach people and work with who you want to work, how has that shaped you or changed you?
See, that comes with its own problems. It's an experiment. It's also corrupting. It's also empowering. In the sense, I've been dying to make this movie, Bombay Velvet. I finally had access to stars and money, and people believed in it, and they made me make it. At the end of it, when I finish it, everybody looks at it and realizes, oh, this is not commercial enough. So no, that is an afterthought, because in the beginning they're all fighting who gets their paws on this project. So that's the fight. Nobody's really looking at what project it is. So when it's done, then everybody's like scared. It says, oh, this might not make so much money. So everybody starts working in different directions how to make it something else. And what was the intention of it. And that's what I realized, that you have to, in the editing room, it can't be so democratic, you know. I'm saying that there must be democracy in the society, but in the editing room, it can't be so democratic. They are actually absolute dictatorship. and that is where, that will only come with when your cost is low. The money investment is low. The lower the investment, more they leave you alone.
Have you ever, like, when you conceive a story and when you vision that entire film, क्योंकि आपके आपके दिमाग में तो होगा शायद मुझे ऐसा बनाना है शुरू से आखिर तक, do you see the entire movie in your head before?
I see my story in my head. I see, and it's a very vague, I see the film in my head, but I don't really place it in the sense. I have this vague.
So it's not sequential.
No, it is sequential. I always see the film in my head, but I see it in terms of performance as an actor. But it's not a fixed thing.
Right.
It is constant. It's a constantly altering space. It's a constantly moving space. It keeps altering itself, changing itself. The image, the faint image in my head becomes clearer and clearer with each passing day. Like when I see a location, suddenly it becomes, the whole language changes. Like when I'm writing, I wrote my new film. While I was writing it, it's always somehow the geographical dynamics of it depends entirely on which place I'm sitting and writing it at. So if I'm writing it in, say, some town, and there's a canal in between and there's a house across the canal, my story will suddenly have a canal and a house across the canal. When I go and find the location, and it's like I wrote it in Amsterdam, but I'm shooting in Dharavi. So Dharavi, there's no canal. Suddenly it becomes a nala. There's a house and there's nala across and the house in the slums. So it alters itself.
Right.
So it's constantly adapting.
Right. So now tell us about your writing process, because I mean your writing is amazing. Your screenplays, आपका जो script का एक process है, आप किस तरह लिखते हैं? Or do you have a traditional format, or
I just write. I write like I vomit. In the sense, it's like
he writes like he vomits.
Yeah, it's like it's a regurgitate. In the sense, I eat. It's like I consume. I assimilate, and then use.
It's probably the only vomit that's like productive.
It is, but I spend a lot of time consuming. It's like I eat for a year or more than a year before I sit down and write. So I read. It's like I'm making a movie about say something. I'll read every material associated with it. I'll talk to people. I have a team that will research. I'll consume all the research, and then I'll disappear. Sometimes now I also work with some co-writers. So I let them do whatever. When the material comes in, I'll give them a vague idea and give them their space to write what they think of it. So if any of it makes sense, I need a trigger point. So if they all write, so when I get a trigger point, then I tell everybody to get lost, and then I take all the material, go sit somewhere, and I puke for 5-6 days.
That's amazing. So now, we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, but tell us what sort of advice you would give to newcomers, जो भी आज VT पे उतर रहे हैं, सपना लेके.
My only thing is like, see, I don't know. Some people have their process and they're very aware of it, and they're very lucky. It's very important to find your own process. Because the way I make films is not the way you're going to make films. We each of us make films very differently. So, and a lot of people they just want things in a hurry, in a sense. I think before they know what they respond to or react to, they want to take a camera and just shoot. So I'm saying you have to find yourself first. And sometimes in the process of finding yourself, you'll find a movie. I think everybody has to find their own process. And it's a very rewarding experience, but you need a lot of patience.
So I'm going to make it short, and then we're going to open to the audience for a Q&A. Now that you're in Vancouver, and this is your first visit to Vancouver, and as far as I know, you absolutely love this city. It's a beautiful city, and you're planning to come here and shoot your next film rather soon. So what do you expect, or what do you anticipate out of the production houses here, and co-productions or support? What do you look forward to?
I just look forward to kind of ease of working.
Right.
I'm looking for that space that I always seek, where I can, I can shape a baby. Yeah, that's all.
We're all excited to see the shaping of that baby and birthing of that baby. On that note, I would like to open now to the floor. So just raise your hands, and then we can. Okay.
Is there any time when project ceases to be a passion project, and your enthusiasm flags a little, or would be thoda pakka rahiye? And if so, then how do you kind of recharge and start?
I don't pass it.
Okay.
I don't know. Because I have had ideas for years.
Right.
But my final writing process, which I say, is always when I'm so excited by it, and within a given time I go into shoot.
Great.
Some projects like Alvin Kalicharan or something else, it didn't happen at that moment, and for me they died out. I gave the script to anyone who was interested in it. So it's not.
The bit dies, it dies.
It dies, yeah.
Anyone else?
I like you spoke about your finding your own process. I do a lot of theater, so I kind of resonated with that. But the process itself is also evolving, right? So
Yeah,
at
it's
what
always
point?
evolving.
So at what point did you become so clear? Because you require that clarity when you come on set to create that process and that environment.
I don't think so. There's any point. I'm saying there comes a point where I'm clear that now it has to go because tomorrow is releasing.
Okay.
Until then, I think it's always. It's a continuous process. It doesn't stop.
You were talking about how, especially with smaller budget, there's always little compromises you have to make, changes you make on the fly. And something I've noticed in making my tiny films is that sometimes you can have an overall vision, and then you're making small compromises, but then at the end of the day,
They're not really compromises. I don't really believe in compromises.
Right. But in terms of so we're making small changes, and then if that, how do you maintain the overall vision?
See, it's a very simple thing. If you look at it as a compromise, it will always come across like a compromise. It's a very simple thing. When I was talking to my actress, and we were shooting this very intimate scene, and while talking to her, I realized, I said, why is it that when we see Indian movies, and our actresses, when they do intimate scenes, or they do anything, or actors, or when they're at the pool or wearing a bikini or something like that, they look very awkward, and it almost seems vulgar as compared to the other films. And we see films from across the world, and there will be an explicit sex scene or something else, and it does not look so vulgar. Why is it? It's because they're so self-conscious. It's because our people, they tend to think that, okay, I have to do this for the sake of the scene. This is what they tell themselves. This is what they have no sense of being. They have no sense of pride in themselves, in their bodies, nothing like that. And they talk to themselves like that they think it's a compromise I have to do and I must do in order to get ahead. And it comes across as a compromise, that's why it looks so bad. I'm saying when you know this is part of you, and you just are there, it'll never look like a compromise. I'm saying I don't see it as a compromise. I have to work it myself. It's like I cannot find, I was telling this example yesterday. I had a situation, I'm shooting this scene, it's a 5-page scene between two actors, and there's a crowd of 10,000. And if I don't shoot the scene, I can't come back here. The cops want to throw me out, the crowd is shouting, and either I can say pack up and go, or I have this 1-hour window and I have to do something. I asked them to play music to drown the noise of the crowd, and I asked the actors to talk over the music. So they're shouting, and it became a scene. It seemed like a scene. There's so much noise and crowd in these two points, and it turned out such a brilliant scene. It's not a compromise. I'm saying if you really look to find a solution, it will never be a compromise, it will be a solution.
More like
And
improvising.
actually, no, and it is something that you can't really write. Because you are in a situation and you are finding it, something that you cannot pre-visualize, it will always be better than what you have written. So it just depends on how you look at it.
Perspective. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. Like you work with assistant directors, and like I know that in Gangs of Wasseypur, the chase scene in the traffic was directed by Slok Sharma. So how do you divide the work? Because you have a vision of.
I have like a team of these 3, 4, 5 people. It's a very simple thing. It's like I still have my cell phone. If you look at my cell phone, I shoot a lot on the streets. And now what has started happening is people recognize you on the streets, and they like I said, they come and stare at the camera, and they can't do anything. So what I do is I go, especially when today's day and age is much simpler. I'll go and shoot a sequence, say with the actor on my cell phone, right? And I've taken a shot. Now I can't go say near the airport. And there's the sequence. Suppose I have to go and take the shot near the airport. And not this one, sorry, I'll just show you. This one. So, and this is right behind the airport. And I have to put the actor there. And if I go there, there will be crowd, the police will not let us shoot. So I'll go quietly on my own. The moment if I'm without a camera, they don't recognize me. Or without a crew. So I'll take my own shot on my cell phone. And instead of this boat, my actor was sitting there, and then I'll explain. And I'll take all the phones, pass it on WhatsApp. I disappear, the actors come, my ADs come, and they take exactly the same shot. Wow. So that's how we work. And I do that a lot. So it's every film, it's like this. Sometimes, and I have to go on the location. I have to go in hiding. I have to, maybe a day before. So I take all my shots are it's completely exactly like aise karte hain. With Slok, the advantage with Slok and Vasan and Neeraj that I have is why I also produce their films. Because they have their own minds. So with Slok and Vasan and Neeraj, I don't have to actually shoot it exactly like this. Like if you see, Vasan was my second unit in Bombay Velvet. Neeraj was in Ugly and Slok was in Wasseypur. So my thing is, I need shots of sand mines. I need shots of the chase sequence and things. So the lunchtime and there's a lunch break, they get access to all the cameras. They go, they take the actors, they create a scene, and they just take shots from all vantage points. The idea is to cover it. The idea is to shoot a lot extra. And Slok has got arrested thrice for shooting gangs also. Because all the sand mining shots he went into, they're real sand mines, with real mafia shooting it. All the coal stealing shots were actual mafia stealing the coal. And every time they got caught and they saw the camera, they thought they were news guys. And Slok would get beaten up. And he got locked up thrice. And that's how we shoot films.
How much does he get paid to do all this?
He gets to make films first.
I have room for one more question.
I just have one question. Like for Ugly, I like one of my favorite characters is the character of the old woman whose nephew is master. So how did you because she, I think, what's the problem?
She's non-actor. It's just because of her face, her presence and the way she walked. She stayed behind my building. And my casting director found her there. And then he worked with her for 6 days, did a 6-day workshop with her. And her personality was so strong. So you have to work and direct with people, work with people like that. You know she cannot remember. If you ask her to remember the lines and say it the way you want it will never happen. So you tell her the essence of the scene and you depend on the co-actor. I always depend on the co-actor. If you see both the scenes of her, the co-actor is literally interviewing her.
Yes.
So I depend on the co-actor who is a trained actor. So I know what I want out of her. So I give her information. This is what has happened with you. Your son has disappeared, but you don't talk about you don't tell anyone who he is to you. You don't tell anyone because there are things he does behind your back and you could fall into trouble. And you have had enough experience in life, you spent enough time in jail. So I psych her into being a person. And then I send a cop to ask her questions, and the information that she has about her character, from there she becomes a real person trying to answer those questions. And then the simple thing like looking up would be something that I will just tell her, now smoke a bidi, and she'll light up and smoke a bidi. And I said, no, look at that place. So already good place. It's just, he kahan rakha hai? I said, oh, baksa kahan rakha udhar dekhiye. And she'll go and look at that baksa. So, and it's like, I know what I'm making out of it. But she's just doing her job because that's how I work a lot with the, like the guy who makes fake guns in Vasipur. He's the actual guy who made fake guns in the place. I had no idea, like he can't act. So I sat down and I interviewed him and shot his interview like a documentary. Then I changed the angle and I made Manoj's face say things that I had to say, and when I cut it together it becomes a scene. So what happens is the information that I get also is very fresh. You can't write that information. So that guy actually makes gun. He knows what will work and what will not work in making a fake gun. That's information that I don't have. It's only a guy who does his job has. So it's a lot of things that you're constantly arriving at.
I have a final question that I just got via text message on my phone right now. One of my buddy wants to know, who are your personal influences as a filmmaker? Who influences you? Who has influenced you, inspired you, and who still influences you today?
Lots of them. I get influenced by a lot of people.
Top three.
I'm saying on a larger level, my big influence is Martin Scorsese. My one big influence is Jean-Pierre Melville and Fritz Lang. And there's also like Paul Thomas Anderson, I think is a genius filmmaker.
Right. And in anybody that in India, Indian film?
In India, like the way Vishal Bhardwaj writes, his amazing skill of dialogue writing, grasp of it. Right. Dibakar Banerjee, Vikram Motwani, and lots of filmmakers down Tamil, like Vetri Maran, Bala, Marathi, lots of them.
That's amazing. Well, this is, sorry, oh you have, okay, one more question, sorry.
Like nowadays in all the films, editing has been like so much, like even a little bit of scene, like if they're shooting behind like some big bungalow, they're like editing and graphics is becoming so much in film industry. So what's your take on that?
I think every film has its own thing in the sense it depends from film to film what it needs. Like, now people shoot every aspect of filmmaking, behind the scenes, making everything. I hate it. So my set, if the making of guy, I'll see him, I'll break his camera. So they always have to protect their own camera, and they have to also shoot our making of like I shoot my movies. They have to hide their camera and shoot. Because I get very irritated with the whole, while I'm in the process of it, one guy comes in and is shooting and in your face, what am I telling the actor? And I just take the camera and throw it away. So everybody, and I did it only on my big budget film where we could. And I knew the camera would be. So after that, they've learned.
Thank you. Final note, they say film is a reflection of society and society is a reflection of film. And personally, I am very grateful and appreciative of you being in that society and in the film, both sides of the reflection. Thank you so much for inspiring and being the face of newcomer and parallel cinema, and inspiring and supporting the indie film makers. And so I wanted to personally thank you once again so much for coming and doing this and talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all very much. Thank you.